Welcome to Biology A. Welcome back to Biology A. We are going to focus today on a very small, incredibly important little molecule, and we call it ATP. The reason we call it ATP is because adenosine triphosphate is a big name. It's a big name because it's a big player in everything that we like to have in our life today. So, for example, if you look above my head, there we go. You'll find the reason why we call it ATP. So the two blue geometric shapes here, you should be able to recognize as a nucleic acid. That's adenine, i.e. adenosine triphosphate. So that's the adenosine portion of the name. Now, the right above my head, like my little pink crown, that's a carbohydrate. You should recognize that by now. That's ribose. You also see that in RNA. So these two, those two together, the adenosine and the ribose, are part of the nucleic acid. They're also found, I should say, as nucleic acid. This one's really, really particular because over here, on this side, there are some phosphate groups here. Now, don't misunderstand. Right now, there are only two phosphates, diphosphate. But adenosine triphosphate would have three, right? So what you're seeing is a version of ATP without a phosphate on the end. So this is technically ADP. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm going to put my mug away and I'm going to have you watch the cycle for how ATP, adenosine tri-3-phosphates, is formed from adenosine diphosphate. So just to recap, adenosine triphosphate, it's got a nucleic acid base, that's the adenine and the ribose, and it has there will be three phosphate groups tacked on to the end. Why do I care? You're going to learn. It's going to be amazing. But I'm going to turn off my video camera and want you to watch this. So, wait, where is it now? Come on. There we go. So what you should see happening here is the adenine and the ribose portions of the ATP, they don't change. What happens is, I'm going to walk you through it. Now, energy comes along and adds another phosphate group to the end of this. So instead of adenosine di, 1,2-phosphate, another one comes along. It costs some energy to do that. So we're storing energy in there. And that becomes adenosine triphosphate. I want you to think of this like an investment. If you save money, then you can use it later when you go back to the bank account and open it. So think of it the same way. This bond that's going to form here at the end, this bond right here holds energy. You saw the energy being added to stick that on there. Now, that means, look, this has changed to adenosine triphosphate here. But now there's a potential energy, just like your savings in the bank, for when something needs to get done. Because every time you want to get something done, you've got to spend energy. So in order to get the energy, you've got to pop off, sorry about that. You got to pop off that extra phosphate. So watch the cycle. High energy, bond broken, energy's out. Add energy to the end, and a phosphate group. This is annoying. Add energy. Okay, let's see if I can do this again. Okay, there's your third phosphate. They are high energy phosphate bonds. You're only going to break the last one off, hopefully. Come on, there you go. Stop it! Okay, to do the work, to release the energy, you got to break this bond off again, and that's why there's another phosphate. The good news is you can put that phosphate back on take it off, put it on, take it off. It takes energy to do both, but when you have a lot of energy, when you're breaking down food, for example, or you're building up food as a plant, then you have the ability to store it for now, use it later. Okay, so explain how ATP stores and release, big picture, sorry. Big picture, we're talking about hydrogen, oxygen, and other specific elements. Now, if we backtrack here again, at this point, you should understand that there is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen built into these molecules, okay? Nucleic acids are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and phosphorus, right? And then the sugar has carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in it as well. So don't forget that. So explain how the structure contributes to its function in storing and providing energy. If you can just pop off the end of this little, this third molecule, where is it at? If you can just pop off that third phosphate here, that's a pretty easy way. You just have to break off a little piece. So that's how the structure helps. All right, so just no, I've basically said the whole spiel right here, but there are 3 phosphate groups if you want to see what they look like molecularly. Here, let's take a step back. The first one of those first learning targets was identify how, or the big picture was identify how carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, well look, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, all through here is carbon. Oh, the carbons are in these little bends too. And then other elements, well in this case, N is another element that you'll find in nucleic acids, N-nucleic acids, in the base of those, and then P, phosphate, here, in the phosphate groups. So those 2 of the other elements that we said were in there. So CHON and P. CHON and P, chomp, okay? So that's one thing to remember we've been talking about in class. 3 of them for triphosphate, 2 of them for diphosphate. Tri is the savings, di is spent. The sun's energy, how do we get this? How does this whole thing start? The sun's energy is absorbed by plants. Plants transfers that into glucose. Then the animals eat the glucose, okay? And then they store the extra energy. Let's say you get a big check. You're not going to use it all right now. So you're going to break open, you're going to cash the check, and then you're going to use a little bit, but you're going to save a bunch into your savings, hopefully, and not just buy something fancy. Sometimes that's fun. But then the ATP is what you're saving it in, all right? So that's the function of saving it. Glucose and ATP are the 2 important players in this process. Glucose is the primary molecule that cells use to form for energy. You got to break the bonds apart in glucose, and then you all the energy that's released you store in smaller molecules so you can use them in pieces later. Glucose stores the energy, you break it apart, you release the energy, use some, store the rest in little molecules that you can use in your muscles or in your cells or anywhere. Everybody accepts ATP. That's the right way to look at it here. How do we call it? American Express is accepted everywhere or whatever. So ATP, your cells use it, in your muscles, your brain uses it, your lungs use it, every muscle, every tissue, all types of cells will recognize and accept ATP as an energy source. But not glucose. They won't all accept glucose. All right, finally, just to wrap up here, how do we get the energy out of the ATP? In order to get it out, you break this bond, the 1, 2, 3rd bond between, or I should say the bond between the 2nd and 3rd phosphate groups. The energy of ATP is stored in the chemical bonds in the tail here. That's what you have to remember. And all of this energy we can use for anything that's required for cellular metabolism. So we talked about metabolism in Unit 1, right? So anything that your body needs to do, it needs energy for. So that's what we use the energy stored in ATP for. All right, so that wraps it up. Big idea. We've talked about where carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and in this case, nitrogen and phosphorus come in. We've described how the ATP stores and holds our energy for us, like a bank savings. And we've described how that structure with the tail that you just pop off the end of that phosphate, that little phosphate group on the end. We've talked about how when you pop that off, then it releases the energy it's holding. So think about how you're feeling. Are you ready to go? Are you still thinking? Or maybe you're like, I don't even know what ATP is. It's okay. Start all over again with the video. Take notes on your guided notes. Ask me questions in class. Whatever you got to do, I'm here. All right? I'll see you soon.